Okay, we are now recording.
Great.
The
As
request.
a reminder, all projects will still start via a service request in Famous that will get assigned to you via the email that you usually receive from Rich Daborski. You will still create the project, but as a PR in Famous, and those directions are in the help files. So that process doesn't change.
Excellent. And so the PR is required as a prerequisite to the request application in Unifier. And we will be asking for the Famous project number when you're entering the request application in Unifier. It's not a very complex workflow, and the form isn't too complex either. But I think understanding the process is probably the most important part. So you can find the request applications business process in Unifier from the company workspace. If for whatever reason you don't see it, or you lost it, or you go there and it looks different, make sure, first of all, that if you're not seeing request applications, that this is the blue man group is gray. That means you're in user mode. If it's blue, that means you've accidentally switched to admin mode, and you can just simply click that icon to flip back and forth. And if you've lost the tab completely, it will always show up when you press the plus button under key locations. So, okay, when you first come to request applications, you'll see all of the request applications that have been entered. Right now I'm in UAT, which is our training environment, and you know, you can feel free to come in here and create request applications if you want to practice. Do not practice in the live production environment, however. One question we get sometimes, or folks wonder if, you know, hey, I'm seeing all these, but, you know, as a project coordinator, I just want to see what I've entered. Is there a quick and easy way to do that? There's actually a couple of ways. One, you can use this find on page to just search for your name in the project coordinator field to do a quick sort or filter of the information, or you can actually create your own view, which we cover in the intermediate basics class, of which we have one this afternoon. By default, there is, of course, this records created by me view, and you'll see that in any business process in Unifier. So that's another way to just quick switch to just the records you've created, but regardless of who was entered as the PC. So if you're working on somebody else's behalf, just be aware of that. All right, I'm going to go ahead and click create. Which will bring up our form. So the first field we are entering here is the project name. As outlined in the help file, there is a specific formula or naming convention that the university would like to apply, which is the building code, or if there are multiple buildings, using the multi code with a hyphen followed by, you know, if it's specific to a room, to put the room number in there as well. I think I have a Fisk example here.
Thank you, Eric. One thing on naming conventions, if it is a state-funded project, there is a very long state-funded name that must be copied exactly. We did increase the project name field to accommodate that. That's the only change from following our normal naming conventions. In Famous, you will still put the building code first ahead of, and you can kind of abbreviate that state-funded name because that's how we search in Famous. But in Unifier, we will put the whole state specified name.
Thank you, Catherine. Yeah, that forgot about that change. It was quite recent. This had been limited to 50 characters for your project name. But we have now expanded that to 128 characters, and you won't get that error if you go over 50 characters. So those long state project names, we should be able to accommodate. We have also updated the help file to reflect that new character limitation being increased.
You will also notice that Eric did not put spaces on each side of the hyphen. That is our requirement as well.
Okay, yeah, provides consistency, especially in reporting, and then also cuts down on our limited number of characters. Also, when you have projects open, you'll see that the tabs don't expand. So by not having spaces, it kind of helps put as much visible as we can. And yes, no more all caps. We will just be using proper text. So I know that was a holdover from Famous, but in Unifier, Unifier is case sensitive or representative, so we can use proper case. Okay. Available funds, if known. Project planner, project manager, project coordinator. At minimum, we need the project coordinator. If we don't know who the planner or PM is going to be yet, you can type in this field to search for a project coordinator. This field should be limited to individuals who are project coordinators. So if for some reason we have somebody new or we don't see somebody, feel free to raise an issue, because that would mean that we simply didn't indicate them as a project coordinator in the company workspace. I'm going to put myself. There's also a location to indicate the primary location. Speed type or speed types. If plural, and this is kind of your initial speed type, recognizing that the speed type may change as you get into a funding request, and they create a new fund for the project. So
that speed type will be on your service request in Famous.
Project type, capital or non-capital. We will be releasing bidding in Unifier, but those will be a separate project. This is only for housing projects that just want to use. I'm not sure if it's limited to housing, Catherine, but it was just for if they were only going to use Unifier to manage bidding.
If we have projects that are still in Famous that want to use electronic bidding, then they would come here for that as well.
Okay. But capital and non-capital will also have the bidding capability. So that's why it's bid only, because that's the only functionality in that project type. So if you create a bid only project, that's all you'll be able to do in there. So for this example, I'm going to select capital. There was a question about multiple speed types. You can just separate them with a comma. Contracting method, if known. Some projects you'll know from the start are design, bid, build. Others through feasibility may end up determining a different method. Famous project number. The system will validate that this is not a duplicate. So there is a unique number enforcement here. So I can select one, but I'm pretty sure it's going to give me an error. So we'll see that in a minute. We can also indicate if it belongs to a particular program, like deferred maintenance or controlled maintenance, or if it's a housing project. These are just simple check boxes, so any that apply. This is more just for reporting. The primary client contact, that's just a text field. And then the financial contact is optional if you know a specific financial contact. And then opportunity or issue description. So we've got a little bit of text here to help you kind of fill this out. Why is the project being done? What problems being solved? How relevant is it to the strategic goals of the department or campus? And then what constraints or limitations, financial, physical, political, or otherwise have been discussed, including scope, funding limits, regulation, quality standards. For the purpose of this training, I'm going to be brief, but we'd want a fairly good description in there. Building proctor, manager, or other. So this will allow us to enter kind of contact information for the building. It does require at least one. I'm just going to put in John Smith. So if they're not necessarily the proctor, building manager, you can indicate other, and we can have up to 3. Catherine, I don't know if you want to expound on how this is being used, but
it's good to always have the building proctor listed because you will be communicating with them as the project goes along. In the case of arts and sciences, you will always add Zach Tupper for number 2. For brand new buildings, there is no building proctor. That's when other comes into play, and it might be your key client contact at that point. I've seen as many as 1 to all 3 of these filled in with key individuals.
Okay. And that is the form. Just like other business processes, there is the ability to add comments or attachments, but there's nothing specifically required for this particular business process. So once you're done filling it out, you've got 2 options here at the top. You can send or save. Reminder, if you save, it will only appear in your drafts. It will not appear in the list until you send it. So if you're working on it or you need to validate something before you're ready to submit it, go ahead and save it to your drafts and then start it back up again. Otherwise, if you're ready to send it on, click send. There is only one option to submit, and it does go back to you. The purpose for this is that any workflow business process in Unifier, once it reaches the end of the workflow, becomes what we refer to as terminal status, so it becomes locked. So we put this review step in here just to give you one more look at this before you say, yep, this is the information exactly as I want it, before it's created into a project. I will hit send. I will now see my new application request in the log here. It will also appear in my task list at the company workspace. Because it assigned a task to me, to review that request application. I can open that up from either location. I'm going to open it up from my tasks. Just like every workflow business process in Unifier, I'm going to be presented with a read-only format until I accept the task. If you attend our intermediate basics training, you will discover some new options for accepting tasks and also for completing tasks in bulk. So if you do have a situation where you've got to enter, 5 request applications and, you're pretty confident in your information, you can actually get all 5 of them through this review step all at once and save you a little bit of time. But again, the purpose is just to revalidate and self-validate, self-review the information before sending it on to the end of the workflow. Sorry, let me close that. And again, you still have the 2 options here to send or save. If you make a change here, so let's say I add another speed type and I hit save and then close out, it's still going to sit in my task list. But because it's been sent into workflow, I can actually just reopen this task and see that change. I don't, once a record's been sent into workflow, you don't necessarily have to go back to drafts. So just be aware of that. When you're ready to send it on, go ahead and click send. You'll have 2 options here. If for whatever reason we needed to cancel this would just simply cancel this record. No project would be created. You'll see it sends to the end. In most cases, you'll be selecting assigned, which just means the project's been assigned, which also goes to the end, but the difference here is it's going to kick off another process for administrators to create that project. So go ahead and hit send. It drops off your task list, but will remain in the request applications log. And then just for a little peek behind the curtain on what happens next, and these next steps are not project coordinator steps, these are administrative steps. The system creates a project creation record. Basically, it's a copy of your request application that's used to create the project. So you see the status is blank, but once the status is approved, that means that project creation has gone through and the project shell has been created. So you see it goes to B and fill, and they're pretty quick with responding to these. They'll put in some system administrative stuff, including who's going to be the administrator and what the status is. They also have the ability to cancel from here. So if you just submitted a request application, and there was a last second change, get a hold of B and Phil before they process, and there might still be an opportunity to prevent it from being created. Once it's created, of course, we can always set it to inactive. So, and then based on who's been selected as the PM coordinator and planner, they should be notified at the end of the workflow. So you see I was selected as the project coordinator. So I appear here in this notification. I believe that had not been working, but then we fixed it a few weeks ago. So, and now we get an error because I've already created a project with this name. Unlikely to
Change the room
happen
number.
in production. Um, but I selected one from my recent entries in the field, so they can change it if they need to. Likely they would contact you and you would agree on a project name change. But again, I don't know, maybe in 10, 15 years, if you're still using Unifier and you need to remodel these restrooms again. But I will say it only validates it's only validating against active projects. So once this project's closed out, it shouldn't be an issue. All right. So I'm gonna go ahead and, again, as the administrator, just so you can kind of see the background stuff. And then based on the project type you selected, capital or non-capital, Unifier will then create that project shell with the appropriate business processes and workflows for that. If we've selected the wrong project type, it's not a fun process to try to switch it between a capital and a non-capital. I would say the sooner the better, because right after creation, we could just inactivate that project and then create a new one with the right project template, capital or non-capital. But once you start populating it with records, it becomes very difficult. So,
And remember that designation is anything 2 million and higher is capital. Rich is very good about noting that in the service request to create a capital or non-capital project. If he forgets, then just send him an email or do a quick call.
So as soon as you get that project creation notification, you should be able to just log in and search for your project. So you can see it's already created our new project 157. And then from here, you'd start in with the user management and making sure we've got all of the users set up properly, but we do have a separate training we'll be recording for those steps, along with project information and locations, kind of all those next steps as soon as the project's created. And that is request applications. So thank you all. I'm going to stop the recording.